friends, welcome. Welcome in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. It's good to have you here. And thanks for joining us today. As you probably recall, today is the Sunday of our annual meeting, so we're planning to have a bit of an abbreviated worship service so that we can move into the meeting and still be home in time before people faint from hunger or anything like that. So the plan is to kind of cut the service to the bone. We've gone down from 4 hymns to 2, and we'll do one lesson, and we're going to invite the kids to go straight out and do the church school right away so that we can keep things kind of tight and compact for our worship service. But it's the first Sunday of the month, and so because of that, we have to celebrate birthdays, especially in April, because it's my birthday in April. And we thought, and we'll invite anyone who is joining me in an April birthday to come forward now and be recognized. Paul, I think you're broadcasting me. That's what you want to do, just pause that. Is there nobody else is celebrating an April birthday? Could have.
Yes, sir. I'm afraid
They're not here. My goodness. I'm amazed. Well, okay, let's do that anyway. Happy birthday to me. There we go, and thank you very much. So let me invite the kids to go with Anne, and we'll begin our service in just a sec here. Oh, thank you. Yep. It's a good thing somebody's organized. And so let's begin the worship service then with these words from Scripture. May those who sow in tears reap with joy. Those who go out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy. Friends, come. Let us worship. And our opening hymn. I'm sorry? You didn't get to play a prelude. I'm sorry, Nancy. Let's take a moment to listen to Nancy play the prelude before we do the opening hymn. I'm just anxious here. Here we go. Let us pause and relax and prepare ourselves for worship, and I will collect my thoughts too. Nancy. I wouldn't have wanted to miss that. Friends, come, let us worship. And our opening hymn from More Voices, Let Us Build a House. And let us pray together. Help us to be that kind of house, O God. Help us to be the kind of house where love dwells and everyone is safe, where healing and strength are offered and received, where each are named and their uniqueness celebrated, where tears mingle with laughter and we all learn how to forgive. As we walk through the business of our life together, remind us again that we don't gather for business, and that all the programs and dinners and trips and apple pies are just tools we use to build that kind of house, so that we might become the place where all are welcome, and where your grace enlivens our living and blesses not only us, but everyone who comes in contact with us. And so let us bring our confessions before God in silence. Anyone in Christ is a new person altogether. The past is finished and gone, and everything is fresh and new. So friends, rejoice. Trust in the good news. Thanks be to God. There are 2 points in the life of the congregation when we remember those who have died in the past year. Right around All Saints' Day, we remember everyone who has touched our lives in one way or another, and we do that wonderful, moving ceremony with the candles. Today's the other point. And today is the point where we remember not just those who have been close to us, but those who have been a part of us, those who have been members of this congregation. And as we move towards our annual meeting and the business that we will enact together, we need to remember the importance of this community and the place it's had in so many people's hearts. A few years ago, we moved that ceremony out of the business meeting and into the worship, because we kind of felt that it belonged in the context of worship. This year we're remembering only one person, only one member who has died in the past year, and that's Mary Finley. Mary was a member of this congregation for many years after Malcolm retired from St. Luke's United Church. She was active in our UCW. She came out to most worship services. I still feel a hole when I look out at the congregation, not to see her sitting there. I think of her too, coming out to some of our special services, the Holy Week services, the Ash Wednesday service. I remember her graciousness and her quietness. I remember too being utterly astonished by a story that Malcolm told us when we were preparing the funeral about how the most important trip that Mary ever took was to get on a freighter and go to Antarctica. And I remember being utterly astonished by that, because Mary was so quiet and contained and proper that I couldn't quite imagine her on a freighter. And yet he talked about how much she loved it. So just take a moment of silence now and give thanks for the ways that Mary has touched your life and the ways she helped to shape our community here at Forest Hill. Loving God, you call us to be a church that is made up of unique and particular individuals. And each person in our community puts an irrevocable and special mark upon us. And so today we give thanks for Mary's life. We give thanks for the ways in which she worked among us, that she laughed among us, that she encouraged us to think more deeply and to love more clearly. We bring thanks for the legacy that she leaves and for the ways she helped us see you and our mission more clearly. Be with her as she explores the new life that you have in store for her. And be with us as we remember and we live in the light of the witness she offered us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I didn't choose this reading because it's about a person named Mary. But it's an interesting segue, isn't it? This is actually the reading that just comes to us from the lectionary for today, 2 Sundays before Easter. We're reading from John's Gospel. 6 days before Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. And there they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at table with them. And Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, and anointed Jesus' feet and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" Well, he said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put in it. And Jesus said, "Let her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. Well, you always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I think often when we read the Bible, we have we make an assumption that really what we ought to do is behave just like the hero of the Bible story. It's a fairly simple-minded assumption, and often I think it doesn't lead us astray, but sometimes, like in a story like this, you wonder, where is this supposed to lead us, and what is this supposed to teach us? And I hope you'll be relieved to know that I wasn't planning to do any foot washing today, with or without perfume. I don't think that's really what this story's about. But I think often when I come at this, and maybe you too, I'm almost embarrassed to find myself asking the same question that Judas asked. Like, what is this about? This is an enormous, costly gift, and I don't come from a culture that routinely washes people's feet as a sign of hospitality. If you invite me into your home for dinner, I won't expect to take my shoes off and have you wash my feet. So some of that feels really, really foreign to me. That much, I guess, would have been fairly common in their culture. But the idea of adding perfume to the water and the idea of adding really expensive perfume to the water, I mean, this is extraordinary, and it's supposed to be extraordinary. It's extraordinary for everybody who's there. And I guess part of me does kind of connect with Judas. Like, what's this about? Why spend that much money on a gesture? We're in our annual meeting Sunday, and I can just imagine, our auditor isn't here yet, but she's coming. I can imagine what she would think if she saw an item in our budget that said we're going to spend a year's salary on a special ephemeral gift for the leader. I don't think she'd be too impressed. I don't think the Canada Revenue Agency would be very impressed. And we have really good and wise rules and guidelines about what our money is for. And it's not to enrich ourselves or our leadership. It really is to do the kinds of things like giving it away to the poor. It's intended to make the world better, not to do something pleasant for one person. So I can go that far with Judas. He's raising a real point. And you know that if it had been anybody else except Judas asking that question, that it probably would have got a better hearing. But we all know where Judas stands in the Bible, and we all know because this is written down after the Good Friday and all of the events of that. We all know that anything Judas says is always considered suspect now by anybody who hears it afterwards. So in what ways is Judas wrong? What's this about? Well, I started thinking about different kinds of gifts that we give to the people who are important to us. And I thought there are times in our lives, in all of our lives, where we want to give something extravagant or over the top to somebody important to us. It's amazing to me how much people will spend on an engagement ring, for example. Maybe not a year's salary, but a month or two is supposed to be, I don't know whether it's just the jewelers who say that, it's supposed to be what you ought to spend. I always felt a little intimidated by that, but there's an assumption somehow that this ring is so important that you would want to be extravagant. My wife is nodding. That's a good thing. I won't show you the bill for yours. I remember several years ago now, my daughter-in-law's grandfather took the whole extended family on a cruise to the Mediterranean. And he paid for it himself. He paid for his two daughters and their husbands and their children and their children's partners. I can't imagine what the bill for that would be. Probably about the same as that pound of nard, right? Now, it was a week-long cruise instead of a gesture of hospitality at the beginning of a dinner party. But they will never forget it. What a gracious, remarkable gift. Well, Sarah's grandfather's wife has now died. Sarah's grandfather has Alzheimer's and doesn't always even recognize them. And that cruise has become a really important memory for them of who he was before he lost it and who they were before his wife died. And it changed the family and drew them together in ways that they still talk about. What, 10 years later? How about that? Remarkable. So these kinds of extravagant gestures, I think, are powerful, and part of why they're powerful is that they're not common. But it's an important reminder for me, I think, that Jesus' disciples, that group of people who followed him around for 3 years, they're not just an agency. They're not just an aid group. They're not just putting together a charity and filing returns with the CRA. They are a community. They are a group of people who came to know each other so deeply and so personally because of shared vision and shared hardships and because of all the different things that they were able to do together. Judas doesn't need to teach Mary anything about giving money to the poor. They've spent the last 3 years doing that, and they will continue to do that forever. We're still doing it. But there's more to being a community than just doing good works. And I think this story kind of pulls the curtain back just a little bit on the nature of those relationships and the depth and the power that those relationships had, not just on the people who got healed and the people who got fed and the demons that were exorcised and all of that stuff, but on the group that surrounded him, on that little internal group that hoped and dreamed and feared and tried to make a difference for the world, and in the process found themselves transformed. I think the power of Mary's gift talks about the power of transformation that she found in the midst of that. A couple of things going on, I think, in this passage that help put it in perspective. First of all, we're told at the beginning of this story that here's Lazarus, who was brought back from the dead, sitting at the dinner party. Can you imagine how grateful Mary must have been? I mean, right from the first time we hear about Mary and Martha and Lazarus, we know that they're really, really good friends with Jesus. But imagine having your brother brought back from the dead. How do you say thank you? Pretty powerful gift. But the other thing about this story is that it's the last story in John's Gospel before Palm Sunday. So that group of people who've been spending 3 years with Jesus and healing and hoping and organizing and praying and expecting the world to change and being wondering when God is going to finally bring it to fruition and how's this all going to happen, they're hearing Jesus talking about going to Jerusalem. They're expecting it. They know how dangerous it is. Passover is coming. The military is frightening. This is risky stuff. And this seems to be, at least in John's Gospel, the very last time they gather before that Palm Sunday demonstration and the events of Holy Week that we ourselves will start marking next week. There's an excitement, I'm sure, in the room, but also some real fear. And there ought to be. This is dangerous stuff. To put all of that in context, and I think you get a sense of that community of people that gathered around Jesus, from which we as a church are born. We are more than just an aid agency. We are more than just a charity. When we are doing this right, we are also, at the same time, a community. A community of people who know each other and who love each other and who can tell stories about getting on a freighter and going to Antarctica. And we can laugh and we can chuckle and we can remember and we can be warmed. And that's important because we are an us, not just a bunch of observers who come to a show once a week. I've had a sense of that this week in a bunch of different ways. There were about 10 of us who gathered yesterday downstairs in the basement. And some of the UCW women were going through the cupboards on the stage, and others of us were painting all of the brown paint and getting it on ourselves as well as on the walls. And we had a ball. And the kibitzing back and forth and the comments. And, you know, we had everyone from Ela to Merlin and all the ages in between. And it was so much fun. But what was fun is that we all knew each other, and we were friends, and we were kind of all engaged in it and encouraging each other on. And Merlin went and found a couple of spare apple pies, and so we came to the end of our day, and she had hot apple pie to serve us. And it was a sense of community. And it did as much for us being together as it did make the hall look pretty. I'm sure our tenants downstairs will appreciate the hall, and we'll enjoy the look of it when we go down for Easter brunch. But that connecting time was golden. I had the same kind of a sense of us being a community when I walked into the hospital room on Friday evening and went and saw Paula Brown. I don't know whether you knew that Paula was in hospital. I didn't until Friday afternoon. Nellie phoned me. She'd been in hospital for 2 weeks, and she has a lung infection, and she may need to go to rehab, and she doesn't want to. And so after supper, I went out, and rather than going home, I went out to the hospital. I was astonished at how her eyes lit up the moment she saw me. And it's not because of me. It's because of what I represent. It's because I walk into the hospital and she sees all of you. And she knows that I'm there because you care. She knows that I'm there because we have prayed for her every week. And that we remember her and value her, and that she is an important part of the little community here that is this branch of the church. That's as important as anything else we do together, you know. It's because we can do that with each other that we can do anything else for anybody else. Last Sunday after church, I walked back to my office and there was a greeting card on the desk, and I thought, Oh, there's the classic UCW birthday card. I get one every year, and it's signed by the envelope secretary. And I took it home and threw it in a corner and didn't even bother to open it because I knew what it was. And it wasn't. There must have been 40 of you who signed it. Wow. That really hit me hard. That you didn't need to give me a pound of nard, and I'm glad nobody took my shoes off, but to have a sense that somebody took the time to arrange for that to be passed through the crowd was heartwarming. There you go. And it made it into the sermon the following Sunday, right? Because these aren't just gestures. They're a part of who we are. And they're a part of why we are. And they're a part of how we do everything else. And so as we move into our annual meeting, and I know some of you will run away because business is boring, but as we move into our annual meeting, think about what it is that makes us a church. Think about the shared vision and the ways in which we do truly try to work together to bring hope and respect and dignity to the world. The ways that we reach out beyond our church and the ways that we raise money and send kids to camp and respond to the appeals and all of those kinds of things that make us a church, that help us to follow Jesus, that help us to do the same kinds of healing in the world that he and his first group of disciples did. Those are all important, and there are numerous examples in the book, in the annual report, about those. We truly need to celebrate them. It's why we've come together. But think also about the things that nurture us, that are also in evidence in that book. We don't have to take each other's shoes off, but we do need to be a community. And there's lots of evidence of that, too, in the book. Jesus' first disciples were more than just a charity. They were more than just an aid agency. They didn't even have to file tax returns with the revenue agency. They were a group of people who found themselves by helping others. They found meaning and purpose and direction and vision and courage and life by banding together for this crazy purpose of saying the world can be better than it is. And God wants us, of all people, to be a part of that. We live in their shadow. We live with the same mission. We are a part of their community too. Amen. And we're not going to sing because we've shortened things, but we are going to move directly into the announcements. And I do want to welcome you. It's great to have you here. There is tea and coffee at the back of the church. And after the worship service is over, rather than going into the parlors, we're going to invite you to go and get a cup of coffee and then come back and sit down, and we'll start the meeting in about 5 or 7 minutes after everybody has been refreshed. So you'll find the refreshments there today instead of in the parlors. A few announcements I want to draw your attention to. Here's all the Holy Week services that are coming up. So mark your calendar. We kick off Holy Week next Sunday with Palm Sunday, and then just work through a race until Easter Sunday and the luncheon after that. If you would like to make a donation to the Memorial Fund in memory of somebody that we will use monies from the Memorial Fund to buy all of our Easter flowers this year. And so you're welcome to make that donation. You can put it in the plate. If you put your name clearly on the envelope, you can send us an Interact transfer. If you get us the information by next Sunday or Monday, then we can make sure your name is recognized in the bulletin on Easter Sunday. If you've been worshiping with us for a while and you've been thinking that maybe this is starting to feel like home and you'd like to be officially on the membership list, speak to me. I'd love to include you, and we will be having a new members ceremony as a part of our worship service on Easter Sunday. So delighted to include you then, and just let me know. Those are all the announcements I have on the screen, so let's continue in worship then as we bring ourselves and our offerings before God. Na kami gana yukun. Salamat sa iyo, O Dios. We give you thanks, O God, for all you have offered us and all you have been to us. Use these gifts and use us to bring your extravagant love to the world. In Jesus' name, amen. So let's gather together our thoughts and prayers again. What shall we give thanks for today? Yes. Work. It's going well, is it? Yes. The church community here. I'm not seeing a lot of speckles of brown paint on anybody, by the way. I think it seems to have come off reasonably well. Other thoughts? The weather. Nobody said that the day of the March snowstorm. Yes. Oh. Yes. Are you saying something, Gary? No? Okay. Anything else we want to add into the thanks? Family and those who become family. What an interesting way to put it. Thank you. What about concerns? Yeah.
The closure of the provincial advocate for children and youth, especially for Native communities who really relied on that voice.
Thank you. What else? Anything else you'd like to add in? Let's bring our prayers before God. Let us pray. O God of healing and of hope, God who draws us together into community and gives us the mission to serve the world, we bring thanks. We bring thanks today for this church that we call home, for the uniqueness of each individual who participates, for the special gifts that each person contributes, for the perspective and background and culture and questions and habits that are added into our collective mix that make us unique and beloved. We bring thanks for the ways that we see you, through the variety that we see here. We bring thanks for work that gives us meaning and joy and purpose and satisfaction. We bring thanks for this season of spring, with the warmth in the air and the flowers pushing their way through the ground. We bring thanks for family and those who become family. We bring thanks for all of those who show us the value and particularity of life. Hear us as in the silence we add our own thanksgivings to this list. We know that the world is not as you would have it be. Even as we can celebrate and give thanks for the moments of grace in our lives, we also are aware of how much pain there still is in the world. We think of some of the changes happening in our province. We think of the closure of the provincial advocate for children and youth. We think of the impact this might have on Aboriginal communities and others. We think of those who are known to us, who are struggling with depression or illness or debt or fear. We think of those whom we name week by week. Hear us again as we do that once more. As I read their names, as we hold them in your presence, help us to reflect not only on their needs, but also on our abilities. We pray for Jeffrey and family, for Gary and Blanche and Malcolm, for Michael, Helen Ann, and Les and Joanne, for Lorna and Nellie and Paula, for Dinesh and Emma, for Jakes, Rhonda, Paul, Regina, Emilio, Nettie, Holt, Eddie, Alex, others that we name before you now. You call us to be a loving community. You call us to care for each other, and in so doing, learn how to care for others too. Come move your love through and among us, and deepen our care for each other and for the world beyond these doors. Come teach us what it means to be a loving community in a hurting world. And so gathering our thoughts and prayers together into one, we pray as Christ taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. And our final hymn, He Came Singing Love. Let's sing together.
Singing
once again, we'll move from worship to business in just a few moments. When we've concluded the worship service, you're welcome to go and get yourself a cup of coffee or tea. I see it's already there at the back waiting for you. And then come back, sit down, we'll start the meeting, and we'll celebrate all the different ways that we are trying to live out the call that God gives us. Whether you stay or whether you go, think about the meaning of the words in that last hymn. Think about what it means to sing love and peace and hope. Go and be the singer. And the blessing of God, Creator, Word, and Spirit be with us all, this day and forevermore. Amen. sorry.
That's okay. It's here now.
Okay. You can stay live for a couple of minutes.
Hi there. Hi all. If you could make your way to the seats, would appreciate it because we need to get out of here before the next congregation comes in. So the first thing that will happen is Steve's going to do what he always does, which is boss us around and call the meeting to order. So Steve, when he gets back up, will call us to order, and then we'll start moving through.
Thank you,
our
Beth.
agenda.
Apparently I have more volume than you do, so we'll have to see if we can adjust that. But in the meantime, let me call us to order in the name of Jesus Christ, the King and Head of the Church. I do now call this annual congregational meeting of Forest Hill United Church to order and to I can't remember the official words, but to enact any business that properly lies before it. I should have that written down so that I remember it for next time. Anyway, we're glad you're here and thank you for coming. There are, I think, copies of the annual report, a handful of them that didn't get picked up last week. They're also available online, and if anybody has a device with them and wants the link, let me know and I can certainly get that to you. There's one motion that we always need to begin, and I usually start the meeting by asking for a mover and seconder of that motion, and then I can sit down and stop talking. So, Paul, could you please put the motion up on the screen so that I get the exact same words? There we go. It's there somewhere. Must be there somewhere. We really do know what we're doing. That's okay. I just want people to be able to see it. But yeah. You may want to stop the display and then start it again. That's the one that we need to. That's the one we need to present. But whether it. How about just a slideshow from the current slide? The motion is to appoint the chair of the meeting to be Beth Harima and the recording secretary to be Sarah Joyce. And Paul will get the slides back up again in a minute, but I would like to actually entertain a motion to do that, and then I can turn things over to Beth, and while Paul scrambles with the computer, we can keep moving. Would somebody like to move that? John moves it, and Linda seconds it. John McCulloch and Linda Fetter. All in favor? Beth, I think over to you.
Okay. Can people hear me adequately? Okay. Thank you for saying that. So the next thing is we need a motion that all persons present, both members and non-members, be permitted to speak on any and all motions that are presented at the meeting. And so would somebody, and we have Christopher moved and Sandra seconded. Thank you very much. All in favor? Against? Motion's carried. The next is the opening prayer, and I'm just going to do a very brief prayer. Lord God, please be with us as we discuss the work of this church over the last year and consider how we move the work forward in the years to come. In Jesus' name, amen. So the next is the approval of the minutes of the congregational meeting. It was the 77th annual congregational meeting held on April 22nd, 2018. Just a little point I want to make. It used to be we'd have these meetings in like May, so here we are in April. Way to be, guys. We're getting there. So if I could have a motion regarding the minutes, and the motion is up on the screen if somebody would like to make it, and then we can go from there. Oh, and I see Linda. Linda is making the motion that the minutes of the annual congregational meeting held last year be approved as circulated. And as seconder for that, Merlin, thank you. All in favor? And opposed? Carried. Thanks. And just one thing I want to mention, the light comes through those beautiful stained glass windows at the back, and I'm not always able to see who's putting up their hand. So if I'm squinting a lot, just shout out your name, and that way that would be helpful. Next on our agenda is the report of the minister. So Steve, I would turn it back over to you.
I'm not sure I have anything to add beyond what I took my 15 minutes of fame to say earlier tonight or today. So if you have questions about what I've written in the report, by all means, this is now the time to ask them. But otherwise, I think I tried to talk in the report and in the sermon today about what inspires me about the work here.
So questions for Steve? He loves questions. You all know that. No? Okay. In that case, could I have a motion to accept the minister's report? If somebody would like to move that. Don't be shy, people. Oh, George Waller and Pat Roach. So George made the motion, Pat seconded. All in favor? Any against? Looks like it's carried. Thank you very much. So the next item is the report of the official board, which I penned. And I have to say, what inspired me most is, again, what Steve talked about today. When I saw the title was Extravagance in the sermon, I thought that's really bad for an annual general meeting. But then I realized through the sermon that it was really about what has inspired me about Forest Hill, which is we are a community. And it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you may do outside of these walls, within these walls, we're all here, we're all friends, and we're all equal in God's sight, and we're here for the good times, and we're here for the bad. And that is really important in today's society where, unfortunately, communities have become so fragmented. So that is what inspires me, and I think I talked a little bit about that through the report. Is there any questions that anybody wants to ask about the report? All right. If there are no questions, if I could have a motion to accept the official board report. Paul, and seconded by Emma. Sorry, Emma. And all in favor? Okay. And against? It's carried. The next is the report of the Congregational Life Committee. And Linda, I understand you're going to present the report. And let me get you a microphone.
Funny to hold one of these and not be singing. But if you've all read the report, that's lovely. If you haven't, in a nutshell, congregational life is exactly that. We do things in which to bring the congregation, the life of the congregation together, whether it's a bus trip, apple pies, men's baking challenge, a fundraising event. Several of the ladies here have been doing it for years, and that's part of what would inspire me with this committee, is the year after year after year after year commitment. And I know Linda, who is our chair, she's been doing this well beyond we formalized as a proper committee. So her dedication and her willingness to want to do this for so many years, gosh, Linda, I don't even know how many years you've been doing this, but that's inspiring, that it's a commitment that is that strong to want to bring us all together in ways that we may not do so outside these walls, and in ways which allow us to learn from each other, to get to know each other better, and have fun in the process. So So that would be my inspiring, is this yearly commitment that these ladies have and wanting to do something different, or how can we make it better, or how more exciting can we get, how many more people, what do we have to do we can bring more people together. So that's my inspiration for this committee. So I'm going to ask that if you can accept the motion as written. Somebody say yes. Thank you, Sandra. And Danny McCullough to second.
Thank you, Linda. And the next report is George is going to give the report. Oh, sorry, we need a vote. And all in favor? And any dissents? None. Passed. The next report is Property Committee, and our George Waller is going to present the report. So I'm just going to hand over to George.
Hi. There's been a lot of development around the church in the last year. A lot of new windows on the west end, new windows on the east end, a lot of work for the Montessori school, putting in toilets. Property committees had nothing to do with that. We've been working around the edges, but then the fabric always frays from the edges. So they've been doing stuff like getting the carpet repaired, replacing the fan in the bathroom, doing fence. All this is very necessary work to hold it together. Now, in terms of inspiration, I must say a lot of this work isn't too inspirational. I spent 3 days in the roof, in the attic, in the summer, trying to figure out the wiring system and doing pothole repair in the car park in the rain. That wasn't a lot of fun. But like Steve pointed out, the good bits are the communal activities, where you get a big bunch of people together and you can have the pleasure of doing a good job shared. And at least if you haven't actually done that good of a job with a big bunch of people, they're not likely to blame you. So that's it for the property committee. Any questions?
So if there's no questions, if we could have a move, someone move that the property committee report be accepted, and Christopher and Anne. So Christopher made the motion and seconded. All in favor? And any opposed? It has been accepted then. Thank you. George, when you go back, if you could just hand off the microphone to Anne. She's our next presenter. So now we're getting the report of the church school coordinator. So thank you, Anne.
Morning, everybody. It's nice to see y'all. I don't get to spend much time with you, so that's okay. I get to spend time with the cool people. Who, this year we're all excited about baking for some bizarre reason, so that's what we did one day. I went into the store, instead of buying regular cake mix, I bought the kind you can cook in a mug. Figured that's simple, can't mess that up. Mug cakes. By the time they were done, some of them looked like mud cakes. Somebody got too excited and added too much water. It was a good thing we had an extra. Start again. Read the instructions. That's why they're on the package. Yeah. So it was a good practice in what you're supposed to do when you try to cook, how you prepare. And it was a great discussion area for them, talking about the topic we were covering that day, which I honestly can't remember what it was because the other discussions were much more exciting. Like, a school is not working well. I don't like my teacher. The other discussion was, we don't like Donald Trump. That blew up into quite the discussion. I didn't think young people that young were that aware. They are. We were. We did. That was my inspirational moment for the year. If anybody has any questions, hopefully I can answer them. If not,
So a remarkably quiet bunch here this week. I'm not used to that. Usually everyone has so much to say. I guess we've managed to cover off everything in the written reports. But if we could have a motion to accept the church school coordinator's report. So I see Danny's hand went up very quickly, and then Sandra's hand went up after that. If there could be a show of hands to show whether we agree. It looks like it has been carried. So thank you very much, and thank you, Anne. If you want to give me the microphone. The next is our youth group, and unfortunately Morgan can't be with us today, but I understand from Steve that we are going to have a short video from Morgan that will explain what they've been doing. So here it is. Oh, I think we need the volume.
So what most inspired me was sitting in the parlor with our youth and reading scripture with them. We're reading through Matthew and reading it start to finish. And it's really inspiring to engage with our youth and talk with them about what they see in scripture and to hear them make connections between the parts of the scripture and how it applies to them in real life. It's really challenging and it's really engaging, and I look forward to continuing to do it this year.
Well, thank you, Morgan. It's great. Technology allows people to be here even when they can't be here. So that's really quite nice. So again, if I could have a motion for the acceptance of the report from the youth group leader, I would appreciate that. And I saw Linda made a motion, and Emma, I think I saw her hand. So all in favor? And any against? No? So we're now going to move to the next report, which is me in the Tenant Relations Committee, perhaps one of the more dry committees in the whole group here. And it's when we speak of inspiration in that context, I think again it comes back to the community in that in the only way that we can keep our various tenants who use this building with us happy is if we have a strong community that is able to pull together when something goes wrong, such as our security system failing or some other issue arising. And it's very interesting how we always pull together as a group with church staff or volunteers. They come together, we figure out a solution, and we move forward. And always move forward in a way with showing patience, graciousness, and a real sense of how can we work through this that's in a way that works for all. And so again, I find that very inspiring that that people can just come together on very short notice and work together in a way that truly is reflective of the caring and community that is part of this church. So even something as dry as tenant relations can again show that sense of community that inspires us and keeps us whole and keeps us coming back every week. So if I could have a motion to accept the report of the tenants relay. Oh, first, questions? Oh, Malcolm, yes. First question is from Malcolm. Mm. I think that's a really good comment, Malcolm, and it's something for us to think about. Fortunately, a really good friend of mine attends Windermere United. So I'll reach out to her. We actually work together, and I'm going to reach out to her and pick her brains over the next time when we have coffee or lunch to get some more ideas about how we can do that. I think one of the ways, though, and it's in the report about how we do reach out to the community, many of the people in this community don't have spaces where they can have a family party or something that recognizes a significant event in their lives. Our space is used a lot, the Friendship Hall is used a lot for that activity. Now, while it doesn't bring, doesn't seem directly related to the church, but for being here, people wouldn't have that opportunity. We also do have Narcotics Anonymous, or Road to Recovery as it's now called, has been meeting here for years and years and years. And having interacted with some of the people in that group, they say that having a space that is here and they come to on a regular basis is very meaningful for them. But a really good point that you've made, Malcolm, is how can we now move beyond and continue to challenge ourselves? So, great question. Other questions? Could I have a motion that the Tenant Relations Committee report be accepted? And Anne has made the motion, and I saw Malcolm seconded it. And all in favor? And so I would say that that has passed. The next report is from M&P, and that would be Paul, and I'll just give you the microphone.
And this is where the program all slows down. It's been going really fast so far. But when she gives me a microphone, come on. Two things. First, I introduced last week a new employee that's working in our office, Chanel. Chanel, can you stand up so we can all take a look? Thank you. I learned from a very wise man that you can always get introductions, in fact, whole sermons, out of a person's name. So I looked up Chanel to see what it says. And it says intensely spiritual. The name also comes with love, with caring, fresh starts, and with wealth. I can't wait for that. So Chanel has worked for us for a week. Reports from everybody that has interacted with her is they just love her. They think she's great. And talking to her on Friday, she loves being here. So everything is beautiful, and I'm sure that a year from now, I'll be able to give you exactly that same report. Welcome. We're glad to have you, Chanel. Where is Sydney? Her grandmother's got it. 5-year-old daughter, Sydney. I was a little concerned when I saw how she spelled Sydney, having her spelling and typing for us all our reports. But we'll let her get away with that. She was younger then. M&P, Ministry and Personnel. Our job is to care for people, to care for the people that work for the church, the people that care for us. If you've read the report in the published material, you'll know that that's easy because of the people we have working for us. Being challenged to bring forward one event or one person or one item, moment, they're very difficult because everybody in the staff contributes so much to us and in so many ways that we never see. But one of the ways that I saw last year, and that was intensely personal and meaningful to me, is that a year this time, I got a cold. Got a cold, started in my throat, went into my head, went into my chest. Ended up missing a couple of weeks of church, which is unusual for me. And he kept feeling like it was getting better. I'd relax, I'd rest, it would start to feel better. Anybody called me, I would say, yeah, it's getting better. As I was getting into the third week of this, it was starting not to be quite so good. Well, beginning of that week, Steve called me. He claims he called to see how I was. He, I found out later, was really trying to give me a couple of pieces of work to do for around the church that would help him get going. But he called me as he was driving down the 400, and we talked for no more than a minute and a half. He asked me how I was. He listened to my voice, and he said, I think I better come over there. So he did. In the time it took him to get here, I managed to put on my shirt and my pants half on. I was pretty weak that day. Anyway, Steve came into the apartment, found me, and in less than a minute was on his cell phone calling 911. Paramedics came, put me on oxygen, gave me a stimulant, and then took me down to St. Mike's Hospital. Now, Steve was there with the paramedics, able to give them information on my background, on things that were going on who I was, all the data that they needed, which was a godsend at that point, literally. He came down to St. Mike's, he was there. He sat by me. He prayed with me. He was in constant contact. I have no idea how long he stayed because they put me out at one point. But he was there every time I needed him, every time I woke up. Talking with the paramedics, talking with the doctors, talking with the nurses, they are unanimous that had Steve not come over and called 911, I wouldn't be here today. So, Steve, thank you. I know I said I wouldn't thank you anymore. Obviously, I can't be trusted. One last big thank you for that. But that's the kind of intense caring that we see from all of our staff. And that's the thing that makes this job so rewarding. It is an honor to be on the M&P committee of this church and to work for these people. So I thank you all for allowing me to do that. Any questions on the report as printed?
Yeah.
In that case, we'll ask for a motion to accept those minutes. Deborah?
And seconded
Merlin?
by, was it Merlin? Merlin?
Merlin was first, I think.
Deborah.
Can we race again for the second?
No problem. All in favor? And I believe the motion has passed. We're going to make a new rule here for the meeting, is no one who's delivering a report can make anybody cry. Okay? No more of that, Paul. Laughter only at this session. Paul, thank you very much for that story, and it just again goes to how deeply people here care about each other and are there for each other, and we have to remember that, to be able to reach out to people even when they're stubborn like you, Paul, and they're not really taking help. But at least reach out and do what we can to help. So thank you for sharing that with us, Paul. Really appreciate it. The next report is actually all about caring, because it's the report of our United Church Women. And so that report is coming from Sandra.
Hello, I'm Sandra. We have a lovely report. I hope you read it. The reading today brings up my two favorite characters that remind me so much of UCW, is Mary and Martha. And I think we're like the Marthas. We're in the background, doing everything, making sure we got enough stuff, caring for everyone like that. And the one inspirational moment that kind of covers it for me this year was Mary Finley's funeral. I asked a few people, everybody said they'd come. I didn't go around to everybody in UCW. They all showed up for the reception. They said, why didn't you tell me? We had enough people. They all wanted to help. Mary was one of our community members. Everybody wanted to be in service at that time for it. And we're here for the good times, like all the dinners, we're helping out, but we're also here when things aren't so right. And we always want to be there for everyone, because we're all family under this roof here. Any questions? I'm quick, but okay.
So if there's no questions, can we have a motion to receive the report of the United Church Women? And Emma and Anne, sorry Malcolm, you got to be quick in this group. Or the hand. Luckily, we're not bidding in an auction. But in that case, you'd always win. But we have the motion, and all in favor? Okay, thank you. It's passed. The next is the report of presbytery, and that's Earl to present. But I don't see Earl today.
Earl's ill, so I think she's probably not here. Is she coming? No. So my apologies. She has written a lovely report, and the significant thing about being the presbytery representative is that there is no longer a presbytery. Our denomination has reorganized, and so the presbytery and the conference have been kind of amalgamated together, and the responsibilities are going to a group that is now known as the Regional Council. So Earl has written the last presbytery report, because as of January 1, there are no more presbyteries, and she addresses that a little bit in her report. Anyway, I got an email from her on Friday that she had the stomach flu, and she wasn't sure whether she'd be able to get here today or not, and I guess she's still under the weather. So, not serious, and I haven't had to call 911, so don't panic. But that's where she is, Madam Chair.
So if I could have a motion to accept the presbytery report, that would be great. Anne and Pat? I think it's Pat. So moved by Anne, seconded by Pat. All in favor? And thank you for that. And we hope that Earl's going to recover quickly. Earl, as many of you know, was helping in the office as we transitioned to Chanel. And so as Earl is always there to jump in and to help out. And so we do hope she gets a speedy recovery. And the next is the report of the Refugee Support Committee. I think I saw Minbari arrive. Yes, Minbari's here. And so if you can just talk about what inspired you, because we'll assume everyone's had the opportunity to read your report, Minbari. Okay. Thank you.
Certainly the biggest inspiration, I have to say, in terms of our work was Asmat and Mirion's arrival in Toronto. We all did that. And we were there to receive them. And it still feels pretty miraculous to me that they made it here at all. So, and I know that they're eternally grateful that we were able to do that. Now, moving beyond that, in terms of the Refugee Support Committee, our hope certainly at the beginning was that we would be meeting with them frequently from the get-go. That didn't quite happen for a couple of reasons. First of all, Paul, you're not the only person who has a hard time accepting help. I think, I don't know if you remember this when I was standing here last year, when they were still in Israel, I would tell them that there was a committee at the church that was ready to help them and what kind of help did they need. And they had a really hard time grasping the concept of there being a committee that was set up to help them. And so even once they got here, I would say, you know, we really want to meet with you. There are a group of people that really want to help you. And there was some resistance from their end. I think first and foremost, they said to us, they said to me, we don't want to put anybody out. We don't want to put anybody out. And number two, I think, Linda, you put it best. You said they're proud young men. And these guys had been on their own for so long, had been through so much. And I think they needed to feel that they could come here and make it on their own. I think this has been a very deep part of their identity. So at some point, Reverend Steve and I had this discussion. And Reverend Steve said, well, first and foremost, I think we need to let them know that we're not here, you know, that we're in a relationship where it's a friendship of equals, you know. If there's some resistance about them coming to church for these meetings, why don't we meet at each other's homes? And Wibbet, sometime in November, opened her home to us, and I convinced Asmat Emilion to come and meet with the group. Well, that was the first time that we actually met as a group, was at Wibbet's home in November. And we had a great time. We shared stories of each other. We ate together. We laughed together. We talked about the help that they needed, but that was only part of the conversation. And it was the first time that we really, I guess, connected as a committee with them. And at the end of that night, when I was driving them home, and I said, how was it? And they said, it was wonderful. And the words that they actually used was, they are so sweet and they are so kind. And I think that was the first time that they realized, oh, this is not a group of people, church people, who are trying to recruit us into their church. There really isn't a big ulterior motive here. They care. They care for us. They care for our well-being. And that's what this really is about. So that was the highlight of the Refugee Support Committee work, was that first real connection with them and their realization that we are here to help, not for any ulterior motive, but because we care, because we've heard their stories, and this is how we are going to show our compassion and our love for God and for them.
Well, thank you. That's really helpful. It really brings alive the work that's been done, and how difficult it is for someone to come here and think that people are just there for them, because they haven't had that opportunity to experience the community and that welcome. So
exactly.
So it's really great that Woobit opened up her home, and that was able to have a great connection. And hopefully we can continue the connection and help them as they really get acclimatized to Canada. So, so I think we now need a motion to accept the report of the Refugee Support Committee. Anne and Woobit. Anne made the motion, Woobit seconded it. All in favor? And it is passed, so thank you very much, Mubarak. So the next report is that of the Worship Committee, and Kayla is going to bring that one forward. Hi, Kayla. I'll bring you the mic.
Hi. So the Worship Committee, for me, I think I'm... Sorry. For the Worship Committee, I think I'm the youngest one in that committee. And for me, It's helped me get deeper with my faith personally, and I got to know a lot more people in the church just by coming to this meeting, attending the meetings, and then in turn assisting with services. What inspires me the most is being able to interact with everyone else, because we are from different backgrounds in this church, and being able to get the feedback from the members of the committee and as well of the congregation. It really assists with making changes in services, ensuring that everybody feels welcomed, whether it be just by adding like a different type of song or a different melody to our services. And I have heard feedback from members of the service, and it seems to be working, and everybody seems quite happy with that. Another thing or a service that I particularly look forward to during the year is during the summer, where we get to listen. Not that we don't enjoy Steve's services, but we get to listen to other members in the congregation that we maybe most normally won't hear from at all. They might not even do a reading on the regular Sunday. They get a chance to lead service, and for a number of lead service every Sunday. And it really, for me, I got a chance to speak to host one of the services last year, and it makes a difference. It allows you to get more, I think, intimate with the congregation. You get to share different things about you that you won't normally hear, like I mentioned, on a Sunday. Different songs. For me, I remember when I at least hosted my service, a few people came up to me and they said, "Oh, the songs that you brought up were memories for them when they were younger," and because I grew up Methodist. And other persons who hosted services, whether it's their upbringing or maybe the challenges that they faced, whether it's growing up or just in their current life, it comes up in these services, and it's nice to get involved in that part of someone's life, even if you only see them every Sunday. And one more thing for me is being part of the worship committee. It allows me to get to know a lot more people, and feel more part of the community, even if we have younger persons, we have older persons, we have the little kids. And for me personally, it is a blessing being part of the committee, and being able to see that we are at least helping persons. Because Sundays are the only days that people get to get away from whatever they're going through during the week, and it does make a difference. Any questions for the actual report and the Mr. Finley?
I think that's a really good question, Malcolm, and I'd love to hear from people in the congregation. What do you think about having a directory? Because I do remember a number of years ago when we had it, and it was useful at that time. But people also, today when there's a lot going on there, out there in the world, you may not want your number and email address known. So it's a balancing act. But what do people think? So, Hetty, do you have a thought? Yeah. So Hetty was saying, there's been times when she's wanted to drop a card to someone or a call or an email, but she hasn't had the information, and it's the middle of the week, and she is just busy and not able to reach out to the church office in order to get it. So that is a really good reason to want it. Chanel, did I? Not to be sorry. And thank you very much, although it sounds like you're offering to make more work for yourself. So I don't know if that's...
Job security.
Yeah. May want to rethink that, but we'll keep going. So Sandra, you have some thoughts.
I know different committees share their names, their numbers, and email addresses to stay in contact. And it would be nice if you were in contact with the people you see regularly, and it only be given avenues to family group here. Okay for everybody, but if you would do something like off alcohol, people would want to get in there. But I think we should give it to everybody within the community.
So Steve, you have some thoughts as well.
I can just add, we have a membership program and have just bought all kinds of videos so that Chanel can learn how to use it. And one of the options it has is to produce a directory, and we can mark people as unlisted. So I think probably if we go ahead with this, we can just put the word out for a month or so. If you don't want to appear in the directory, let Chanel know. And then after we've let that go for about a month, she could then print a directory that doesn't include the unlisted names, or maybe puts the name but not the phone number or something. And that's certainly a possibility, so that we could have both camps if you want to do that.
So Sarah asked if the directory option includes the option of a photograph. Do you know, Steve?
The Power Church program would allow for that. We don't have photographs of everybody on file. Normally when churches have let me say this differently. When I've been in churches that have had a photo directory, normally they contract with a company to do that, and the company comes in and they take everybody's photograph and they give you the option to buy your own portrait, which is how they make money. And so then you end up with a photo directory. Photo directories have gone a little bit out of style in our denomination, partly because people get twitchy about having children with their photograph and their name identified. And our policy here at the church has never been to connect a name with a picture of a child. So that's, we use a lot of photographs, as you know. It was really weird one year when the person who won the men's ultimate baking challenge was a child, and we were able to put his picture receiving his prize and not his name. I got a couple of notes about that, but that's why. So we get a little nervous about having pictures of children with their names. There's various different ways to handle that, and church directories work differently around that. But if you're interested in a photo directory, we could talk about that too, but it's a different kind of proposition. It's usually something that takes several months to organize, and then they will set a couple of dates when the photographer comes in, and everybody has to come in and get their professional portrait done, just like when we were kids at school. So it's possible, and if you'd like to do it, we can look into it, but that's kind of why we haven't done it for the last little while.
So what I think I'm hearing is this should be taken away as something for the board to think about, look at what the options are, and then we'll have a further conversation with the congregation just to make sure people are feeling comfortable with how we're going forward. So thanks very much, Malcolm, for raising the question. And so I think what we're looking for now is a motion to accept the worship committee report, and Sandra and Linda. So, all in favor? That's great. Thank you so much. And Paul thought he was going to get away with not doing the accessibility report. I just mixed this up on him. Don't make anyone cry, Paul. Please. So Paul's going to deliver the accessibility report.
That's a nice challenge. It's all these poor people that have difficulty with mobility. We can talk about that. Violin helps, yes. The accessibility is quiet at the moment as to what's happening on it. You see the numbers in the report there where we've raised $186,000, but we spent $151,000. And we're waiting for part of that to come back. Part of that was a loan to Alive, really. It was a loan to tenant relations. It's their fault. We had to make that room so that it would pass government standards. Right now, Alive is benefiting from that, but we're benefiting starting in September, where they start paying back that kind of money. So we've got about $50,000 coming back there. When that comes back, we can move ahead with the elevator. Strangely enough, $50,000 is exactly the cost of the elevator itself. So then all we need is a little bit of extra cash to be able to build the shaft. Everybody loves the word shaft. Okay. But we can build the superstructure around it. So that is being postponed a little bit. We are going out looking for cash from grants. When they come in, we've got to react quickly once they have arrived and start building. So we need to make sure that there's sufficient that comes in at that point that we will be able to go ahead and finish. Taking out a loan is not out of the question, except that we are probably taking out a loan for our roof. And we can only give so much money per week to make all of this happen. So we are very, very careful about how that money gets spent. If I look for a touching moment, I think the best thing that happened with our contractor and the construction of the washrooms was that we cared for him the way I feel Christian people should care for him. He was undergoing tremendous stress, tremendous difficulty in his life. Maybe I can make this into the tearjerker. But we treated him as gently as we could, still getting the project finished. So it balanced in that, yes, it took far longer than it should have, and yes, we ran into a lot of problems that compounded the difficulties he had with the construction itself. But we treated him with respect. We treated him with kindness. I think that's all I want to say about that. Any questions on accessibility?
So with no questions, could we have a movement to accept the accessibility report? And, Kyla? And Merlin seconded. All in favor? Okay, it is passed. So our next is the report of the treasurer and the financial reports. I'm going to turn it over to you, Sarah.
And not that I'm competitive or anything, but I noticed that I am the only one who has invited a special guest today. I'd like to, that's true, actually, that's right. Paul trumped me with Chanel. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you, the members of our church, to Maureen Perry, the accountant who has prepared our audited financials for the past 2 years. And Maureen was kind enough this year to be able to join our meeting, so I'll invite her to come on up here with us. And Maureen's going to take you through a bit of what our audit process has involved, just so that you're aware of the nature of the work that she's been doing to produce these spectacularly beautiful financial statements.
I don't often get people calling financial statements beautiful, but thank you. Most people's eyes just glaze over. So I'm not going to talk about the numbers. I'll leave Sarah to give you the financial report. But I just wanted to talk about the process that we went through. For those of you who were here last year, you may remember Sarah probably presented her financial report. And that was the basis for the starting point for me to start auditing the 2017 statements, or preparing the 2017 statements. Some of the numbers you actually may recognize from her report last year, but there have been a couple of major changes. The first being a simple one. Sarah's report was mostly on the cash basis, whereas the accounting statements that I prepared are based on the accrual basis. The difference being the accrual basis requires you to record things when incurred or earned, rather than just when actually received or paid. The other big change is what's called fund accounting. As you may have heard many times in the past, you have different funds that have been given for specific purposes. For example, your Welsh endowment, you have the manse fund that came from the proceeds of selling the church's manse, the capital fund, memorial fund, and you even have other special little funds that are some sort of a subset, if you will, of your regular general operating fund. So there was a lot of effort done by Sarah and Janet last year to help put all these numbers into the format that you now see in these audited statements. The numbers were already there. We just have basically recharacterized them a little bit to present them in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So we did the 2017 numbers, and this year we did the 2018 numbers, which was a little complicated by the fact that in addition to an audit for the first time, we also transitioned your accounting system into a full-blown accounting program called Power Church. It was being used in the past just for your receipts, but it's now being used for the general ledger as well. That was a real challenge for Janet, and also a per diem bookkeeper that was hired, Anna, to start that process. And it's still an ongoing process. It's conversions are never very easy, but my goal was to ensure that at the end of the day, these numbers presented did tie into the system, and going forward, hopefully the Power Church will just make life a lot simpler for everyone, including, as you were just talking about, the membership directory. It's all an integrated program, so I think it was a very good decision that was made to introduce that program, as difficult as it is to do that transition. I'm not going to go any further unless people have any specific questions about the audit or about the statements that you may have seen. All right, then. I think I'll pass it back to Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maureen. With that, I'm not going to go through again the material that's in your books. I've outlined in the Treasurer's highlights sort of where in 2018 we varied from what we had budgeted, what were those unusual events that occurred over the course of the year. I've provided you with a summary of the performance of the operating fund. As Maureen's pointed out, the operating fund is only one of a number of funds that make up the total position of the church, but it's the one in which we receive the local givings, which we receive our premises income, and out of which we incur most of our expenses that are not tied to a specific capital campaign. And with that, I'd like to move, if there are no further questions, and I haven't seen any yet, I'd like to move for approval of the Treasurer's report for 2018. I'll do a separate motion for the operating budget for 2019. Could I have a motion for the 2018 report? Ann Fraser and Sandra Nodegar, thank you. With that, I'd just like to... We just should vote on it.
So could we vote on the motion? So, yeah. So it's been approved by a show of hands.
Doing both the secretary and the speaking role is a little tricky here. I have to work. I'm going to type with my feet next year. Sorry, I can remember. I also wanted to draw your attention, though, to the operating budget for 2019. This is as closely based on what has actually happened in 2018 as we could derive. We went through, on a bottom-up basis, each expenditure item and tried to anticipate whether that item would recur again in 2019, whether if we had one-off items that occurred in 2018, were they likely to recur. And we came up with what we think is a steady state budget for 2019, which has been presented to you, and which I would like to have a motion to approve that operating budget for 2019.
Could we, Paul is making the motion, and I think Iva? Second? Iva seconded it. Thank you. All in favor? A show of hands show it was accepted.
Thank you very much. And Maureen, thank you for attending and being available to answer questions.
You need to do one more motion, and that's to have Maureen's corporation.
Yes, fine. I'm not used to having an auditor. You can see that. The new motion, which is now going to be part of our meetings going forward, is that every year we will pass a motion appointing the auditor for the next financial year. So in this case, I am putting forward a motion to appoint Maureen Perry as our auditor for 2019. Could I have a thank you, Linda Fetter, and Danny McCullough as seconder? Thank you. All in favor? The ayes have it.
I was going to say before we vote, but before Maureen steps down, I want to acknowledge that having an auditor is something new for us in the congregation, and I think it's really, really wise. We needed an auditor because we were applying for some grants, and they wouldn't look at our application unless we had an auditor. Auditors cost money, but the advantage of an auditor is that it protects everybody. And it gives us a chance then to have somebody who has no connection with us at all have a look at how things are doing and make sure that everything is clear and obvious and correct and above board, and it makes us all feel a whole lot more secure about that. I want to say what a pleasure it has been to work with Maureen. I think often when we think about auditors, we think about somebody who's going to come in and look for mistakes, and that makes us all uncomfortable. What Maureen did was come in and say, what an interesting place this is. And look at all the different things you're doing. And let me help you tell this story clearly. And she has been invariably gracious and celebratory about the ministry of this place. And she has, as a stranger to us, picked up what we're doing in remarkable ways. And as I say, invariably gracious, polite, kind, and positive. It's been a joy to work with you, Maureen, and to watch you work with all of the other staff and volunteers around us, too. So I am delighted that you're willing to keep auditing our books. I think we benefit greatly, both from your professional skill, but even more from your personal demeanor and commitment to organizations like ours. So thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you. Although Sarah and I wondered if the need for an auditor was because there's too many bankers and lawyers on the board. We'll take that one offline. Oh, Malcolm. So there's a couple of different ways of doing it. So let's use the example of Alive, which is a negotiation that actually has just wrapped up in very recent times. We had Janet went and did a review of what other churches were charging. We went over our operating costs and figured out what proportion would be related to the use of Alive of its exclusive place, plus the common elements, common space, as well as we had a discussion with a realtor as to what market rents were for that type of premises in this area. And based upon those three different sources, we came up with what equals market rent for space for a a school and daycare. So that was for the school and daycare. The other rental rates that we charge the different users, in the case of the Champion Life, again, we've had conversations with a realtor as to what is the general, let's call it going rate for service space in churches in this area. And she confirmed that our rates were the same as what would be expected if a realtor was going out and getting a congregation. So those are two of our long-term ones, and how we came to a conclusion as to the rental rates. For Champion Life, their lease also includes an increase at the rate of inflation each year as well, plus an additional amount to help cover some of the expenses. Then for the remaining tenants, the largest one is Spirit of Math, and it's based on an hourly rate, which again we came up with canvassing a number of different, let's call it renters in the area, mostly other churches, and saying, what do you charge on an hourly basis? Feeding that in, looking at our operating costs, and then saying, does this make sense? Does it allow us to make sure we're recovering our operating costs, plus getting something that will help us with the ongoing repairs of the church? And we revisit those rates, at the hourly rates, we revisit it about every 5 years or so. We refresh and see if we're still at the right amount. And then for the Spirit of Math, they have a longer term rental, and again we have increases based on the rate of inflation, plus additional couple of percent, which covers operating expenses like capital repairs. Yeah, I wish there was a simpler method to go about doing it. It takes a lot of time on the part of the church office, as well as going out to realtors and other sources. And I know that Sarah has pitched in. I think Steve got us some numbers. So again, it takes a community to figure out the rent. So the next item is the nominations. And do we have a slide for the nominations? Ah, Deborah. Oh, there she is. Deborah, we're fast running out of time, so I know you can talk fast, though.
Okay, so Earl and Steve and myself, we get together and brainstorm about who are the best people to nominate for certain committees. And okay, so okay, let's have a motion to thank everyone who has stepped down from the certain position that they hold, and we appreciate all the hard work that they did. So we have a motion to pass. Linda
and second
and Sandra.
Sandra, all in favor? Thank you.
And next we just go right ahead to thanking. Okay, so now for the official board. We have nominated Emma. Well, Emma left. Oh no, Emma is there. Emma will be joining us on the board, and George Waller. And okay. All in favor to accept all the That was really fast. All in favor. Great.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry.
So let me just point out one thing that we did. We thanked Earl for her work on presbytery, and then we elected her to be one of our regional reps. It's really kind of the same job, but it's two different titles. So just to acknowledge, that's why Earl is there. Wendy Cameron has disappeared. Not sure why, but many of us have reached out to her and she hasn't responded. So we thought we shouldn't be appointing her in her absence. So Sandra has agreed to be one of our regional reps, which is lovely. But that's why we have a new title now, because of the new organization of the church. And Earl is really continuing in the same job, but with a totally different title.
No, that.
Well, we thank everybody. That was
That comes. No, it's not on the slide, but don't worry, that comes with my notes of appreciation at the end. You're trying to usurp my authority, Sandra. I can tell this is a United Church meeting because, you know, authority just is not taken seriously in this group. So I'm glad we don't take ourselves too seriously. So thank you very much for doing that. It was really great to have a nominating committee who they put in a lot of hard work, and we've been able to fill some positions. So thank you for that committee as well. Other business is now the item. Is there any other items people would like to raise that haven't been discussed here? Okay, seems that we don't have that. One thing I'd like to say is I want to thank everybody for staying so long. Normally we have people departing throughout the annual general meeting because they have other things to do, so I do appreciate the fact that it has in fact you've been able to stay. So now we're at the note of appreciation, and this is a time to thank so many people. We're going to start off with two longtime board members who said that they wanted to give others the opportunity to be on the board. Linda Kalasar, who we don't know for sure how long she's been on the board. Yeah, so it's more than 20 years, so she has clearly served her sentence and served it well. Fortunately for us, she is going to continue to be one of the heart and soul of the Congregational Life Committee and a very important member of our community. So that's great, and we very much appreciate her time on the board and her thoughtful comment. Michael Fraser has tendered his resignation with some regret due to illness. And again, Mike, an integral part of the board, but also this community, and we look forward for when his health improves and we're able to see him more frequently. So those are two of the notes of appreciation that I have. In addition, I want to thank church staff for their tireless work and dealing with our community and others in the community who come here for help and solace, and for reaching out and being so much part of being with others and showing what it means to be children of God. Of course, I always want to thank Sarah for being our treasurer and helping ensure that the money's coming in, the money's going out, they all balance, and hopefully we have more coming in than going out.
We always spend more than we have coming in.
Sarah, not now. Actually, if you've seen the budget in that, it's not the case. Luckily, we've had very generous donations, which have allowed us to do the work needed to keep the church running. So I think that was all I was supposed to speak to on the appreciation side of things. And if I've missed anyone, I truly do apologize for having done that. And it's the chairperson's remarks, and my final remarks will be, I want to thank everybody again for having been here, but not just today, but every time you come here on a Sunday or to any of our events. It is truly wonderful to have such a community, and a community that has so much caring, where people will reach out to each other. And on that note, I think the next item is a move to adjourn the annual general meeting. There should be lots of hands here. Who wants to make that motion? Anne? Oh, John. So all in favor? Thank you very much for your time. If you have cups or anything else, if you could clear them away, as well as help clean up at the back, because we do have the next congregation coming in. So thank you.